I find it very interesting because everybody's going around saying it's an attention economy, and to an extent it's completely true. But there is levels to it where the audience of Logan Paul will be completely different to a guy on TikTok who's doing dance videos. There's always the element of that relatability or trust or likability or real influence. So with the people that you're working with, what do you look for to kind of see, okay, this guy has followers, but does he have followers that are truly monetizable in the way that they interact with their audience and how they interact with them, and what kind of things would you suggest to them to strengthen that bond with their audience and community?
I think there's two things there. Firstly, as I've been doing this, as you can imagine, at some point we had this exact same problem, right? Like, how do we know if an audience is good enough to be monetizable, if that's the right word? And we developed something. So it's called Genetics. So I essentially ended up sitting in with my tech team and we created an algorithm which does the following. Firstly, we can pull any creator's data from all social platforms. So all the analytics, all the data from their profiles through the APIs. All social platforms allow you to do this. Then
Kind
we
of
work
like a
with
social blade, like that, or?
to another level. Social Blade is one API we use, but we use 5 others too.
Got it.
So we use direct platforms and then other third-party ones. And everyone's doing Social Blade is just getting YouTube data and showing it to you. There's nothing to add to it. But then there are other companies out there now that are adding stuff to it as well, from the things you can't get through the API, you get it through scraping. The point is we aggregate all the data, then analyze it. In that, then I can tell you what does work. So even if you go and look at your analytics and if you're like, okay, do I have an audience that can make money? There's a couple of things. Firstly, you got to have 70. I'll tell you what's the perfect audience is, let's say it like that. Firstly, you have to have at least 70% same-sex following.
Okay, interesting.
Just off the bat, because that's the most important thing, that do you have the people like you following you? Number 2 is at least 50% same location following. So hence why you'll have some girl, if she has followers from, or a guy from followers from India, Russia, whatever, as a bodybuilder, you're just never going to sell because his audience is just not anyone like him. So what I found in this journey of 200 million is people buy from people just like them. Very same reason to maybe why you've asked me on this podcast, because I'm brown and you're brown, similar age, similar background, immediately you want to speak to me, right? And this is synonymous on social media. And brands don't realize this, people don't realize this, that ultimately you'll be able to attract more people like you. And that's why telling your story and who you are and all that stuff becomes that much more important for you to pull in. And if you look at who's really big, in most cases it's because of that. Back to the numbers.
Is there a level to that? For example, of course, you have maybe a lower tier influencer who, the more relatability, the consumer can therefore, he wants to pay him because he feels like he's the same guy just a few years ahead of him, for example. But then you have these kind of ones that have transcended to completely global markets where a Logan Paul, he's selling to anybody and anybody. Same with Mr. Beast and maybe even Iman at this point.
But it's stages, right? It's like saying Ronaldo versus a guy who wants to be a footballer. So like, yes, of course, but I think it's just stage by stage. So at this in this initial stage of quantifying an audience and is it worth something, then once you have a monetizable audience and you're making millions from it, it's a different strategy at that point to be like, how do I now... You're a star then, so everything is a bit different. We can talk about that in a second.
What would the strategy be? Let's say a newer influencer, now they have this goal of, okay, these kind of analytics are in my favor. How can I reverse engineer my route in the content I make or how I deliver it to find my perfect audience?
Yeah, I think just to finish off on the analytics, I think one of the key important thing is, so we said location, we said sex. The other one is like interest overlap. So we look at what the APIs allow you to see is, I can map your interests versus your audience interests and see where the overlap is. That allows you to understand, is there any overlap or not? For example, we worked with a creator once, we launched a fitness product, and then we developed this years later, and the main overlap was fashion. And essentially we launched the wrong thing and it never sold that well. So I have like good and bad on both scenarios to know what works, what doesn't. Then it's growth rates. It's obviously the amount of... Obviously, most people just think engagement is likes divided by followers, and it's just not, because it's all about reach. It's all about how many people actually see your content, and do the right people see the content. So in that journey, I guess we've really realized what works. And so my whole thing now is, so I have an acquisition team. Their job is to sit and find creators. Essentially they can search the username. In an instant, we find out. We call them a mega creator or not. For us, a mega
Okay.
creator is someone that can sell at least 250,000 a year. Then we would be interested in
Dollars or
talking to them.
units?
Dollars.
Okay.
So if you can sell $250,000, that's the entry point for even us to even look at your profile, basically.